Alien is a classic film that has stood the test of time so well that it's hard to believe that it was released over 40 years ago back in 1979. As with almost every film, it has shots that have become movie legend. And, as it happens with almost every legend, it has created some myths. Ridley Scott wanted to make a B-movie sci-fi horror film that felt like a high-budget movie. But in order to accomplish this with a meager budget of $8.2 million, he had to really think about what they absolutely had to spend money on, and what, with ingenuity and clever solutions, they could get away without. He began by clearly separating the human world from the alien world, and he did this by using two completely different styles of artists, and having each create their own world. Everything to do with the human side of things, from the spacesuits to the safety symbols on the Nostromo, was designed by Ron Cobb, Chris Foss, and Michael Seymour and his team. Ridley wanted the interior set for the Nostromo to be like a rabbit warren, with lots of different corridors connecting different rooms, so that the actors couldn't exit the set without having to walk through the entire thing. Ridley wanted this so he could make the actors themselves feel trapped and claustrophobic, and therefore better transmit the feeling of having nowhere to escape to and nowhere to hide. So instead of building individual sets for each room, the sets for the Nostromo's 3 decks were each created almost entirely in one interconnected piece. Unfortunately, this meant that they didn't have any long corridors to help establish the magnitude of the Nostromo itself. So, rather than pay out more money for longer corridors to be built for shots like this one, they positioned a mirror at a slight angle at the end of their short corridor to show a reflection and make it appear a lot longer. To establish the external scale of the Nostromo, Ridley didn't have enough money to build the landing leg as big as he wanted, so he had a 17.5 meter high one built, and he had 3 child-sized spacesuits made. These suits were worn by a cameraman's son and Ridley's own sons, Jake and Luke. Then, by over-cranking, which means shooting at a higher frame rate than the rest of the film, and playing the footage back at the film's slower frame rate, the children's movements appeared to be slower, have more weight, and therefore look more adult-like. Everything to do with the alien side of things, from the architecture to the xenomorph itself, was designed by Swiss artist Hans Geiger. The actual xenomorph's design came directly from Geiger's art book, Necronomicon. Roger Deakin worked on building the models for the facehugger, the chestburster, and originally the xenomorph itself. However, differences of opinion between the producers and the filmmakers over how the models should look and move caused too much stress, and he resigned from working on it. The main problem they had was with the xenomorph's mouth mechanism, because they couldn't get it all to work nicely together without having visible springs on the outside of the puppet, and making the head a lot wider than Ridley actually wanted. To solve this, they realised they'd have to spend out and acquire the help of special effects legend Carlo Rambaldi. Rambaldi removed the unnecessary lip movements and concentrated on what he saw was important: the mechanisms for the mouth to open, for the tongue to slide out, and then for its own mouth to open, and to make the whole thing small enough to leave a cavity for the actor's head. To give the alien its viscous and visceral look, they used dozens of industrial-sized tubes of KY jelly, but we found that you can achieve similar results by using aloe vera gel pushed through some tubes. Ridley Scott was trying to capture as much as he could in camera, so just like the Nostromo's interior set, the egg chamber set was also built at Shepperton Studios. Interestingly enough, this blue laser was borrowed from The Who were testing lighting for their live show on a neighbouring soundstage. The eggs were designed with an aperture at the top that could be opened hydraulically. The internal and detailed shots were filmed at Bray Film Studios after principal photography was finished. The egg they shipped to Bray was translucent and mainly made from fiberglass resin. The movement inside the egg was achieved by Ridley Scott himself, wearing washing up gloves and moving his hand inside the egg. To accomplish the sequence where the facehugger jumps out without having to spend too much money, it was broken down into 4 separate shots. The first is where Kane looks into the egg. Next, a shot of what he sees inside the egg, which was actually a cow's stomach. Then this whiplash effect, this was done by combining a shot of the facehugger puppet being pulled into the egg and then reversing the footage, a shot of a sheep's intestine being shot full of compressed air, and then the final shot of the facehugger puppet stuck to Kane's helmet and Kane falling backwards. A fairly widespread fact that is actually a myth is that the cast didn't know what was going to happen in the chestburster scene before they filmed it, but this in fact isn't really true. The cast had read the script and had seen the creature in the puppet shop and therefore knew exactly what it was and where it was going to burst out from. The movie Alien was almost as successful at the box office as Star Trek, the motion picture. And yet it didn't have the fan base that Star Trek did, and it only had a third of the budget. This is because while big budgets may allow filmmakers to pay for every little thing they want, they aren't great for ingenuity. Alien had such a tight budget that the people working on it weren't doing so to earn large sums of money, they were there because they loved the project. And even if they had to struggle to achieve a shot, invent to achieve an effect, they did so with the passion of someone who really believes in what they are doing. And just as a stressed vine produces the best wine, they produced a movie that outstood time.